Steven shouted loudly. Even the disaster misfortune monster hiding had to peek up, letting out a cry as a backdrop. Damn it, there's another mad saint here. Lighting began to spread everywhere. John and Hugo stared blankly as Steven rushed towards the two disaster misfortune monsters like a madman. Once again, he screamed, "You two, get out of the way. Don't block," interrupting Big Bone's performance. Li Jian was bewildered, not understanding why Steven was so angry. But Teep Su seemed to realize the reason. The closer they got, the angrier Steven looked. Steven raised his hand to activate Emperor's technique, summoning a golden shield that covered a vast area, completely separating the inside from the outside. Standing confidently outside the shield with one of the disaster misfortune monsters, Steven smiled confidently. This stage belongs to me. He was very excited, wanting to try out the newly purchased weapon worth $1 billion. People often say, you get what you pay for. He believed this bone was a rare treasure 1,000 years old. One hand in his pocket, the other carrying the enormous bone, Steven faced the disaster misfortune monster unflinchingly without a trace of fear. The crowd, struggling against the disaster misfortune monster, became joyful and excited upon seeing Steven. Oh my, look, there's Steven. The strongest saint has surpassed Li Jian. The cheers grew louder, encouraging Steven to step closer to the blue disaster misfortune monster, driving the white bone beside him, murmuring, "Now it's time to pay for your reckless actions. Brace yourself for this." The man's muscular arms swung high, the white bone powerfully slammed down. The sound of the wind being sliced filled the air, and the atmosphere suddenly froze. He sensed something was off. The crowd around him also felt strange. Even the disaster misfortune monster sensed something was wrong. He hit it, but something didn't feel right. Steven lifted the bone from the monster's head, moving it to the right and then to the left, inspecting it from above and below. The disaster misfortune monster kindly helped him examine it, scratching its head in confusion before returning to a fighting stance. Once again, Steven swung the bone at the monster's head. Once, twice, and then 3 times. As he swung, he shouted in his superhero voice, but each attack felt no different than scratching an itch for the disaster misfortune monster. It growled in annoyance, kicking Steven in the face, deforming him and sending him flying like a volleyball on the court. He wondered, why isn't Li Jian's weapon working? I clearly used all my strength. Li Jian lightly touched the barrier created by Steven, knowing that he couldn't get out for the time being because that brute had resorted to Emperor's technique. Cracking his knuckles, Li Jian swore, "If I get out of here today, that guy Steven is going to regret it. Even a saint dares to use Emperor's technique. This gorilla must be tired of living." There was another matter to keep in mind. There were 2 disaster misfortune monsters. One was with Steven, so the other one was definitely among the group of people trapped in the Emperor's technique. Before punching that red monstrosity in the face, they had to deal with the people sprawled at their feet. They were being manipulated by the disaster misfortune monster, acting as puppets. It was quite difficult to remove these disgusting entities. Hugo Otters gritted his teeth, trying to come up with a solution to save the civilians without harming them, while breaking the monster's control. Their steps drew closer. Hugo Otters looked at his friend, confidently turning to smile and say, "We need to put an end to this. Whatever you're going to say, spit it out quickly. Speaking vaguely isn't helping anyone." Li Jian, growing impatient, advanced while covering his mouth to yawn. "Let's finish it off and then go to sleep." Hugo Otters hurried to stop him. "Hey, going that way is a mistake," because Li Jian had stepped into the attack range of a zombie. Seeing him without a hint of emotion, Li Jian tiredly reached out to grab the head of the puppet. The zombie's eyes revealed danger as his other hand grasped the black goop clinging to the man's body, tearing it off like pulling apart shredded meat. Hugo Otters was shocked, thinking his friend was tearing a man's shirt in the broad daylight. The disaster misfortune creature also stared in confusion at what Li Jian was doing. Li Jian just lowered his hand, a victorious smile on his face as he looked at the unconscious man, who was completely unaware of anything. Hugo Otters looked at the slimy mess that Li Jian had just thrown on the ground, railing like it wanted to find a new host. He couldn't understand how Li Jian could so easily catch it like that. With an arrogant attitude, Li Jian exclaimed 3 words, with strength. Hugo Otters was speechless. He wondered, is there an easier way to explain this? Knowing you're strong, why do you still tease me? Li Jian turned back and pointed at his friend's face, mocking him. "I told you were weak, but you didn't believe me." Each of his words felt like a slap in Hugo Otter's face. He wondered if this guy would die if he spoke in a more pleasant manner. But then he sighed. After all, Li Jian had decided to charge straight into the enemy's den, and he could only support him, unable to stop him. Without wasting any more time, Hugo Otters understood the situation and joined Li Jian. Oh, Hugo Otters and Li Jian were fired up. Oh, Hugo Otters said, "You're still going to charge ahead, right? Then let me handle the support." Li Jian remarked, "Oh, Tiksu, you're just as you used to be." Both of them became extremely excited, not only because they were fighting against the disaster misfortune monster, but also because it had been a long time since they last collaborated. Now they had the chance to unite and combine their strengths once again. One person charged forward while the other provided support. It was rare for them to team up like this, and the refreshing feeling was unexpected. Hugo Otters raised high the fire bow of the sun god Apollo, aiming straight at the disaster misfortune creature and the controlled crowd. Li Jian reminded him, "Remember, don't mess around, just deal with them quickly and efficiently." With that, he kicked off the ground, leaping into the air and landing among a group of people controlled by the disaster misfortune. As soon as his feet hit the ground, a radiant blue light burst forth, causing the area to crack open and directly knocking the sludge away from the innocent people. Without giving them a chance to reattach to the others, Li Jian grabbed them and crushed them. The disaster misfortune monster roared, and then continued to unleash a wave of black sludge towards Li Jian. With lightning speed, he sprang into action, sending the attacking black sludge flying away. It felt to him as if they were merely scratching an itch, having no effect at all. Suddenly, the sludge stopped actively attacking Li Jian. They changed their target to the distant civilians, but this intention was quickly detected. An arrow from Hugo Otter shot through the air, igniting the entire mass of black sludge. In the haze, with a semi-divine figure full of vigor, Hugo Otter said, "Don't dream of hurting anyone." At that moment, Li Jian was still charging at the disaster misfortune monster on the other side, not forgetting to praise his friend. Awesome. He slid down below the reach of the disaster misfortune monster, arrogantly taunting, "Stop trying, it's all useless." Li Jian acted so quickly that the disaster misfortune monster was caught off guard and couldn't react. Turning around, it saw the human, and immediately, a brilliant punch landed straight in its stomach. The monster was launched into the sky in a distorted position, accompanied by a loud shout, "Get lost." The ground trembled, rocks flying up along with the enormous monster. The disaster misfortune monster howled in pain, its bones cracking, and its entire body quickly shattered into pieces. Li Jian stood there, posing impressively, showcasing his well-defined six-pack abs. Hugo Otters joyfully ran over, astonished. "I can't believe you dealt with it in an instant like that. I know my friend loves to brag, but that move was so cool. I have to compliment it." The pit where the disaster misfortune monster was thrown down was deep. Above, people lay scattered, but fortunately, they had not been caught by the slime and were likely to wake up soon. Li Jian's palm suddenly began to glow. More precisely, the image of a snake in the center of his palm was glowing, and a series of information panels floated down from the sky in front of him. "You have stripped the breath of disaster misfortune with your bare hands. Accumulate more divine power. Current divine power is 81%. Total absorbed divine power has exceeded 70%. You accept to expend divine power to use first-level God Warrior Instinct. A choice appeared, yes or cancel. God Warrior Instinct. So I have to accumulate this much divine power to use this skill." He exhaled sharply. "That's fine. I'll accept to try it out. With that much divine power spent, there must be something cool about it." Meanwhile, at Li Jian's side, Stephen was still struggling against the disaster misfortune monster with a white bone. Looking at himself struggling just because of a disaster misfortune monster, he frowned and muttered under his breath, "Damn it. He didn't expect things to turn out this way and didn't understand why this big bone wasn't effective against the creature. Could it be that he couldn't tap into the true power of the big bone? He wondered, or is it because I'm weaker than it?" Looking at the situation between Stephen and the disaster misfortune monster, outsiders could see that he was at a disadvantage. Those around him began to feel anxious, not knowing what to do now. If the Savior is like this, then the disaster misfortune monster will just bite us each in turn and we'll all be doomed. Suddenly, someone among them exclaimed, "Wait, look over there." From behind the barrier, blue and black electric sparks intertwined, forming a powerful mass of energy. From within, Li Jian gradually ripped through the barrier created by Stephen's astrological magic. At this moment, he appeared more terrifying than a raging bull searching for its enemy. Stephen was shocked, unable to believe his eyes. He never expected Li Jian to become so dreadful. The disaster misfortune monster sensed the strong aura emanating from the newcomer, swirling with a terrifying power that could crush it. Thus, to avoid being exterminated, the disaster misfortune monster opened its mouth wide and charged in recklessly to attack. It wanted to take advantage of Li Jian's moment of inattention to strike unexpectedly. Li Jian raised his head, looking at the audacious disaster misfortune monster with eyes glinting with deadly intent. He shouted loudly, "Shut that noisy mouth." Li Jian's powerful magical energy suppressed all nearby creatures, forcing the disaster misfortune monster down hard onto the ground, screaming miserably. Those who stood afar cheering for Stephen were also affected to some extent as the wind roared violently as if wanting to blow everything out of a 100-meter radius. Stephen knelt down, struggling to stay upright on his legs but still sliding back a considerable distance. The disaster misfortune monster had been pinned down to the ground, only able to wail pitifully until Li Jun approached the massive body of the disaster misfortune monster. At that moment, he was murmuring each word. Why do you have this power? Could it be? Could it be that you are not human? Li Jun looked at him with a contemptuous expression. What nonsense are you saying? His foot stamped down hard on the ground, causing the earth and sky to shake. The terrifying force blew the loquacious disaster misfortune monster into hundreds of large and small pieces right before Stephen's astonished eyes. He stared wide-eyed at the scene before him, unable to believe what was happening. How could this happen? Such terrifying power. It should belong only to that monster. Could it be? He was doubtful, hanging on to a thought he dared not voice. But in this moment, he was certain that the figure in front of him was indeed Li Jun from years ago. Have you remembered each other but not asked about each other at all? Li Jun was covered in muscles, walking forward to greet him with a cunning smile. Long time no see, you fat, golden-haired cat. You must be very pleased to have trampled on my name all this time, huh? Stephen couldn't help but tremble and fell to the ground, stammering, It can't be you. Saying that, he swung the bone in his hand to strike Jun, but the attempt failed because the billion-dollar bone was blocked by Li Jun with one hand. He spoke with a disdainful tone. Oh my, it looks like you're having a lot of fun with that bone. Strangely, Stephen, the one hailed as the strongest saint, could not escape the grasp of a shorter man, even when he exerted all of his strength. Li Jun clenched his fist, easily crushing the bone. What can I do now, since it's just a piece of bone, a bit larger than usual? Stephen looked shocked, his mouth agape and his eyes wide open. He exclaimed, Oh my God, my billion-dollar bone. Li Jun laughed gleefully and swung a powerful punch at Stephen's face. You've been putting up a fight, haven't you? Now it's my turn to return the favor. Stephen barely managed to say wait a minute before he took Li Jun's punch full force. The blow sent him flying across the island, rocks and debris scattering everywhere. Stephen's small figure struck the rocks with a whoosh as if it had just encountered air. He could only curse once more before disappearing. In the auction house, Saintess Aquarius was just regaining consciousness, bewildered as to why she was lying on the ground, as if she had completely forgotten what had happened before she fainted. Her necklace emitted a green magical light and then returned to normal, completely unaware of anything. Meanwhile, Steve was punched deep into the ground, creating a long, empty tunnel like a well. The perpetrator behind all these events continued to laugh heartily, reminding everyone that the fun was far from over. Just meet and punch. Hugo Otters rushed out to check, unsure if Stephen would be able to climb up, but he didn't care about that. He only knew that the big guy definitely wouldn't die. After taking his revenge, Li Jun turned to ask his friend, Are the people in the barrier okay? He nodded and replied, Look, they're cheering happily behind us. Li Jun was no longer concerned. He snapped his fingers, calling upon Ares' divine beast, and ordered it to gather all the valuable items before leaving. While the divine beast was busy collecting things, Li Jun told his friend about his second teammate, who had also lent him his phone. Hugo Otters was extremely excited to know who that was. When he heard the name Sung Jae, it felt like lightning struck in a clear sky. He had to ask again for confirmation. Sung Jae? Chi-un Sung Jae. That's right, Li Jun replied. He's from the Gemini Club. His magic is stable enough to be the Holy Association president. Not to mention that kid is smart, quick, and gets things done. In short, he's great. Hugo Otters, hearing his friend praise the boy, scratched his head in frustration, not understanding how his precious son had gotten involved with this troublesome name. Clearly, Hugo Otters had been very careful not to let his child and his best friend meet. Two obsessed fans meeting their idol would surely lead to the downfall of his beloved family. Just as Hugo Otters was about to suggest teleporting the head of the Gemini to them, he suddenly spoke up to stop himself, his mind racing quickly. Why bother calling them, buddy? The Gemini are nothing special. Li Jun thought that made sense. Memories of the Gemini Association flashed through his mind like a film reel. Indeed, he always got angry whenever he encountered them. Hugo Otters added fuel to the fire to prevent Li Jun from meeting the Gemini. As he tried to stop him, he silently apologized to his son. Your idol is in the news. Li Jun's face went stiff. Hugo Otters, on the other hand, was sweating profusely in his effort to protect his happy family. He patted his friend on the back, trying to manipulate Li Jun's feelings to forget about the Gemini. But before he could say anything more, a voice called out, Dad, which left Hugo Otters frozen. Well, it was all in the hands of fate. The two turned their heads, and Hugo Otters couldn't believe that voice belonged to his son. His troublemaking son stood behind him, asking in suspicion, Could this be Li Jun that you mentioned? Hero Otter's face turned as stiff as a statue upon seeing Sung Jae. He had no idea what the hell was going on or why he showed up at that moment. He wanted to reject the son so badly, but he was agitated, urging him to respond quickly. Hugo Otter stammered like a chicken caught in a trap, still unable to think of how to explain things when he heard a growl from behind. A mass of black liquid crawled closer to the group, then suddenly flew straight toward Li Jian, intending to attack him. Unexpectedly, a treasure popped out from under an armpit, wide-mouthed, swallowing the mass whole. It looked quite excited, as if it were enjoying a delicious meal. A notification board appeared before Li Jian. Divine Artifact has received poison resistance. The skill range of body of 100 poisons has been increased. Poison resistance will show basic effectiveness when crafting this sacred artifact. Hugo Otters and his son stared wide-eyed, while Li Jian was left speechless. He was both shocked and scolding the treasure. Are you out of food? Why did you eat that? Spit it out right now. No matter how shocked Li Jian was, the treasure was determined not to let it go. Hugo Otters looked at the remnants of the disaster misfortune monster, surprised that it could still cause trouble even after it was dead. Sung Jae stared intently at the treasure, recognizing it as Li Jian's sacred artifact from the book he had read. Combined with the extraordinary abilities and the incredible magical power that Sung Jae had witnessed all this time, the only friend who would hang out with his friendless father, plus the shaking smile, he quickly realized that the person in front of him was Li Jian, his true idol. Sung Jae was so excited that he jumped up, tears of happiness streaming down, regardless of the fact that Hugo Otters could no longer hide the truth. Even though he had planned everything in advance, he was now defeated by the reasoning of his beloved son. He couldn't argue back and didn't dare to intervene. The unexpected meeting between the idol and the loyal fan took place. Each father and son was shouting in their own way. Li Jian joined in, trying to make his sacred child vomit what he had just swallowed, but to no avail. The whole island shook from the ridiculous screams of the three. At the headquarters of the Lions Holy Society in the United States, in a grand building, during a high-level meeting, Leo Divine Cater Captain Oliver spoke up. Castellan has been missing since yesterday and has yet to be found. We must rely on those with the search capabilities of the Gemini Society. A member of the society spoke up. It's unclear if they will help, especially since recently Lord Oliver has had conflicts with them. Moreover, another person timidly said, there are rumors that Li Jian is the one who made Stephen go missing. Before he could finish his sentence, Oliver scoffed and rebutted, even if Li Jian could dig up a grave, he is nothing but someone who has already been defeated by the Lord. Before they finished praising their boss, everyone fell silent when they heard the annoying ringing sound. There were lyrics cursing Sagittarius, cursing the lion, but only Li Jian was considered the most adorable. They all turned to look in the direction of the music. The atmosphere in the auditorium suddenly fell into an unusual silence. A girl picked up her phone, silenced it, and said, I'm sorry. I forgot to switch it to silent mode. Leo, the Vice Castellan, and Yua apologized, looking as if they were not truly remorseful, which made everyone shout, our boss is missing. Please take this seriously. One after another, they spoke, giving Yua a headache. She felt annoyed. Why do we have to look for that jerk? Seeing the unspoken expressions on everyone's faces in the meeting room, Yua quickly corrected herself and added an apology for accidentally calling that jerk sir for proper decorum. She asked why they were going through all this trouble, implying that the person would definitely survive and come back. The other members looked at her helplessly, all expressing 3 words, dead for sure. They all had the same thought. Do you really think saying sorry for blurting out will make us believe you? Oliver snapped. I hated this girl for a long time. Why is the vice prelate avoiding responsibility? Yuva ignored him, her eyes fixed on her phone screen, reading messages from her brother celebrating. The uncle has really appeared. Come home now, the legend is back. Oliver growled, but Yuva didn't care. Who was this uncle that had her brother so excited? Bored with the meeting, Yuva stood up and left, offering a polite excuse and saying, I'm counting on you all, leaving everyone helpless and unsure of what to do. They could only stand there with their mouths agape, watching her leave the room. Oliver had been driven mad by her. He held his head and screamed frantically, damn, the boss is missing. That little deputy saintess is no different from a crazy person. Why is everything falling on my bald head? In the sacred land of Aquarius, home to Sophie Maria, hundreds of reporters were gathered in front of the saintess's castle to ask questions. They clamored to know if she was related to the recent event, what the truth was from 25 years ago, and who the kidnapper was. The subordinates stood at the castle gate refusing entry, citing that the saintess was resting. Seeing this, some reporters finally spoke up, gathering to gossip and chase the news. They still only received the response, the saintess will answer another day. Sophie, completely wrapped in her blanket on the upper floor, looked down at the chaotic crowd below, angrily cursing. I don't know what that Li Jian wants, but he's looking for trouble with me. No matter how upset she was, she still cared about her appearance. She brought her hand up to nibble on her nail. No matter what trouble came, there better not be any consequences. Recalling a few days ago when she had just escaped from the auction. In front of the Aquarius Palace, the sound of subordinates escorting Sophie fully covered echoed. The people standing on both sides whispered about her being kidnapped. Suddenly, the necklace around Sophie's neck glowed, causing panic and fear among everyone, thinking it was a bomb. However, it was not. The crowd buzzed, pointing upwards, where a notice appeared clearly with several questions. Who is the one that killed Li Jian? You must clarify everything that happened 25 years ago for everyone to know. After pulling her hair in frustration, not knowing what to do, she realized that revealing the truth would lead the other lords of the zodiac to kill her. But if she kept silent like this, Li Jian wouldn't let her be either. The collar was impossible to remove. In that moment, she lost control and shouted, "It's all that bastard Li Jian's fault." Feeling insulted, her ears tingled as she was about to set down her food, wondering who was talking badly about her. A news report stated that saintess Sophie still had not expressed her views. The saintess also did not leave the sacred area. Experts predicted a series of events would unfold following this incident. In the darkness, a man rested his chin on his hand, staring intently at the TV screen, suddenly mumbling a vague sentence. If so, then that won't do. At the sacred ground of Sagittarius' celestial body at Hugo's home, Otatsu had just fired an arrow that hit the bullseye. He lowered the intricately designed bow, pondering his shot. He heard his friend beside him excitedly ask, "Do you like this bow? It's amazing. The stuff that got Capricorn can't compare to this." Suddenly, his voice turned irritated. "Where do you think you're shooting?" With a whoosh, Li Jian's arrow split Otatsu's arrow in two and landed in the bullseye. Hearing Li Jian call out 10 points, Otatsu looked over, puzzled, mumbling that it was a bit too showy. "Show off much. You got Tatsu this fancy bow while I'm stuck with this wooden one," covered with eyes. "Why didn't you shoot at your own target instead of shooting at mine?" Li Jian, being scolded, laughed mischievously. "Just teasing a bit, no need to get worked up." Suddenly, a refreshing glass of ice water was placed before Li Jian, served by Sung Jiao on his knees, reverently extending the tray with both the water and a towel. He didn't bother being polite, just took it, laughing with the kid. Meanwhile, Tatsu was fuming, wanting to give him a beating for bringing water and a towel to Jian while he got nothing. Now wanting to resort to violence, he pretended to rush over to Sung Jae, saying he wanted some too. "That water's in the fridge, you go get it yourself." The cold words made Tatsu sulk, squirming in frustration, but he still bitterly watched his friend gulping down the water. While the father and son were playing, he opened the system panel and said to himself, "My abilities have automatically increased after the drama. Let's see if there's anything interesting, and I'll invest a little." Realizing that the Holy Land of Ophiuchus had been formed but was at a low level, so its area was just a bit bigger than a coffin, Li Jian didn't care at all. The Holy Land was like a temple for the zodiac sign, allowing the saint to live and maintain their power. Previously, Li Jian didn't have it, but now he did. The system allowed him to manage the Holy Land from now on by moving subordinates and enhancing human power. Another confusing term, what is human power? Sung Jae suddenly interrupted. "Hey uncle, do you want to go out? Let's go together." Tatsu stopped squirming and looked up to ask his friend if he had plans with someone. With a confident smile, Jae only said it was a secret. "I have many people to meet today." He went to the fried chicken restaurant where Pacoma sat across from the president of the Gemini celestial body. He was dressed sharply, slicking his hair back, looking no different from a multi-level marketer. He smiled brightly, looking at the chicken tray as if feeding the whole village, while gazing at the person across from him. He ignored the staff member, who was agape at seeing this guy consume a portion meant for 50 people. Li Jian chewed noisily while engaging in small talk. "I heard you were quite busy." Sung-yuk maintained a robotic smile. "Even if I have 1,000 things to do, I still have to find time to recruit talent." This talent is a bit stubborn, so Sung-yuk had to switch to psychological tactics. His sharp gaze drilled into the person opposite, asking how many billion won of the Gemini celestial body he would use to participate in the auction. He can plan to just wipe his mouth and leave like that. What billions? Who knows? If it's a few billion worth of fried chicken, then we can talk. Seeing him finish chewing and wipe his mouth, Sung-yuk felt truly defeated. Did he really think money was just paper? Although it was a bit troublesome at first, he seemed capable, which is why Li Jian came to see Sung-yuk today. Currently, he had dealt with the bug dung and the golden-furred cat, so the next target would be that shameless saintess. With a serious expression and fried chicken in hand, Li Jian replied, "All right, I will join the Gemini Divine Cater." Sung-yuk seized the opportunity to inform him of the baptism day. Li Jian immediately interrupted him, pointing the chicken leg at the upper part of his shirt. Li Jian set a condition. I have to get the badge he is wearing first. The two bodyguards beside them immediately reacted strongly. You are being unreasonable. This badge is a gift personally given by the Lord to the president. Li Jian appeared indifferent, continuing to eat the chicken. If you can't accept that condition, then get lost. I'm not going to hold back. He lowered his voice to tell Sungyuk, I know that badge allows the wearer to utilize all the privileges of the Gemini society, so before joining Sungyuk's holy council, one must hold something valuable in hand to feel secure. Recalling Sungyuk's earlier statement about wanting to invest everything in talent, Li Jian held the chicken leg and pressed him for an answer. Upon hearing Sungyuk ask for time to think, the two bodyguards immediately became agitated and wanted to intervene. If that's the case, Jian can sit here and wait for the result. Don't forget to make a quick decision, all right? I have another appointment. Though he spoke as if busy, he pulled out a message to inform his nephew that he was stuck here for a while and couldn't leave. Sung Jae quickly replied to his sister that he would be a bit late. Smiling, he waited for Jian at an ice cream shop, which he was sure his uncle would love. Thinking about how shocked his sister would be, with her eyes wide open upon realizing the idol standing in front of her, Sung Jae felt extremely delighted. This rusty, outdated sword was given to him by a legend, making it feel unexpectedly endearing. Later, his uncle would come to engrave his name on it. While he was happily waiting, someone suddenly snatched the sword from his hand, accompanied by a mocking laugh. Why are you playing around with a sword, buddy? I'm taking it away. Sung Jae jumped up, questioning the blonde guy. What are you doing? The blonde-haired Yu Shiwu led two henchmen, grinning with delight. As a level, a Gemini disciple, he looked down on Sung Jae. Seeing his aggressive attitude, Shiwu sneered. Why do you dare to talk back to your senior? Just because he's a little older than me. He keeps picking on me. Sung Jae was itching to punch him, but Shiwu was the son of the Libra celestial body, so he couldn't just act recklessly. That jerk knew this, which is why he always acted so arrogantly. Thinking about how Li Jia had personally gifted him the sword, Sung Jae became agitated and shouted for his belongings. Immediately, two of Shiwu's henchmen pressed him hard down onto the table and mocked him. Despite the staring eyes of everyone around them, Sung Jae grew even more agitated while Shiwu became more amused, throwing out even more taunts. Every time you get caught, your mouth seems to work overtime, huh? I wonder what this is that makes Sung Jae so brave to speak up. Is it something that your beloved Li Jian made for you, or is it a keepsake left by your mother? Hearing that, Sung Jae could no longer contain himself. His face turned full of veins and his eyes turned dark, and he unleashed his energy, ready to charge at the jerk in front of him. Unexpectedly, the holy artifact in Shiwu's hands sensed its owner was in danger and activated a random skill. The light emitted by the sword startled everyone, and Shiwu was blinded, nearly losing his sight. Suddenly, a pitch-black head appeared from within, launching straight up and crashing directly into the leading man's nose. Needless to say, the people in the ice cream shop were terrified. A man emerged from the sword, knocking out that guy. Moreover, the sight of Li Jian stretching out from the sword looked ghastly, like a mummy that had been sealed. By the time his whole body was fully revealed, Shiwu was so scared that he fell backward, hitting his head. Oh no, it's someone I know. As soon as Sung Jae saw his uncle, his eyes sparkled with hope as he called out to him. Li Jian rubbed his head, which had just hit something. Li Jian turned around and recognized his nephew behind him. Sung Jae, I'm so glad. How did you know I was here? Li Jian scratched his head in confusion. I'm at the chicken shop, aren't I? It seemed that the summoning skill his uncle had added to the sword had just been activated. Speaking of which, Li Jian put his hands in his pockets and looked around. His being summoned here meant that these guys had threatened Sung Jae. The guy with the nostrils and those two lackeys were pinning the kid down on this table, right? If you dare to touch his nephew, of course, you'll get to enjoy the signature smile spreading across my face along with a thorough beating. Just hearing about it gives me goosebumps all over. A few minutes ago, Li Jian was sitting with the president of the Gemini celestial body. He had agreed to hand over the badge on the condition that Li Jian join immediately. Seeing him agree, Sungyuk was very happy, but didn't dare to say it out loud. After all, this young man had already spent billions of Gemini's resources. Soon, he would use the clause in the special contract to reclaim the badge. That's why Sungyuk confidently dropped the valuable badge into his hands. Sungyuk had just received the contract from his subordinate and turned to ask him to sign it when Li Jian disappeared right before his eyes, leaving behind a pile of fried chicken and the president of the Gemini celestial body along with two wildered bodyguards frozen in place. Really? He eats and runs away. The contract isn't signed, a person has vanished, but I still have to cover the fried chicken bill of nearly 800,000. Sungyuk's ears seemed to ring. Outside, everything looked normal, but the scene inside the cafe could only be described in two words: desolation. Objects lay shattered everywhere, and dirt from the broken flower pots was scattered around. On the floor lay two young men unconscious. Li Jian threw a punch at Shiwu's face, clutching his throat and delivering merciless knee strikes to his stomach. Even though he claimed to be an A-class disciple of the Gemini celestial body, the second-generation young master of a tycoon family, and the son of the Libra celestial body's saintess, he ended up being thoroughly beaten. Li Jian completely ignored his words, not paying attention to a single word. Moreover, the more he talked, the harder Li Jian hit him. Shiwu was beaten to the point that his face was swollen and deformed. Looking at the blonde kid crouching on the ground, Li Jian cracked his knuckles and said, "Get up, you dog. I'm just getting started. What have you been babbling about this whole time?" Shiwu was breathing heavily, not knowing what to do next since all his defensive spells had been shattered. He couldn't blame Shiwu for being weak. After all, Li Jian was someone who could walk through dangerous areas as if on vacation. But Shiwu didn't know he should clench his fist and vow not to let him continue to be so arrogant. A stream of green magic energy emanated from Shiwu, and behind him appeared a blue-armored bull. Shiwu unleashed his power towards Li Jian, using every move he had without holding back. The bystanders whispered to each other, "He's using magic on someone else in the neighborhood. Run before you get dragged into this mess." Shiwu triumphantly smiled, revealing a gap in his teeth, and shouted, "This is the price you pay for being so arrogant." But despite all of Shiwu's struggles, Li Jian remained unscathed. His voice was filled with annoyance. "Why are you being so loud?" The fire generated from Shiwu's magical power was all gathered by Li Jian in the palm of his hand, forming a swirling ball. That was not enough to warm his body. Li Jian's system interface appeared. "Opponent's skill has been suppressed. You have received the S-rank data of Polaris' bronze bowl." Shiwu couldn't believe it. He could control his skill so easily. He shouted, "Who are you? Are you a wizard?" "No, I'm just a blacksmith." The system interface appeared again to inform that Li Jian could now use the data from the acquired skill, but using it too much would wear it down. If he wanted to use the skill permanently, he needed to collect materials to craft a holy artifact. For now, just enjoy using it. Li Jian compressed the entire ball into a single crystal in his hand, igniting a powerful blue flame. The image of Polaris' bull appeared behind him in a majestic manner. The explosive power pushed everything away from where he stood. He shouted, "I figured out the incantation to summon Polaris' bronze bull." No matter how much Shiwu screamed, he was thrown back, colliding with a massive energy column that crashed him into the wall, creating a huge area of destruction. As the smoke cleared, the world flipped upside down. Before Shiwu could lift his head, Li Jian warned them, "If you dare to touch Song-jae one more time, you better prepare for a coffin." After saying that, Li Jian turned to his nephew with a cool expression and told him that from now on, whenever he meets these guys, he can just fight freely because he has an uncle to back him up. Hearing this, Song-jae admired his cousin even more, as if he were a girl meeting her first love, a school idol. After finishing the fighting, Song-jae's older sister, Yua, ran over and asked, "Why does this little guy's meeting at the cafe look like a battlefield?" As soon as she saw her younger brother, she immediately asked, "Is Song-jae hurt?" "He is hurt, but more hurt in his heart." Song-jae excitedly rushed to his sister, pulling her over to introduce her. "Over here." He pointed at Li Jian and said, "This is the hero who has eliminated countless disaster misfortunes, the hero who sacrificed himself to save humanity. The main character in the video we have watched over and over again. This is Li Jian." Li Jian has fought thousands of battles, yet his scarred face and messy hair are nowhere to be seen. All he sees is his younger brother pointing at a guy a few years older than them. Li Jian turned to look at Yua and smiled for credibility. She couldn't believe it, her mouth agape as she pinched her cheek, realizing she was awake. The atmosphere around suddenly turned a soft pink, because Yua couldn't understand how Uncle Li Jian could be so handsome. 20 years ago, he had so many scars and had to be in the Devil's Tower for 20 years, so I thought he must be in terrible shape. But then Yua realized that appearance was not the important issue. The fact that Li Jian returned safely was already a great fortune for them. Her demeanor resembled that of a 17-year-old girl in love more than Song-jae earlier. Her small heart seemed ready to leap out. Seeing his adorable niece's reaction, Li Jian smiled warmly and began to greet her. Yua kept bowing her head, her face still as red as a ripe gak fruit. He smiled and said, "Relax, Hugo's daughter. Just call him Uncle Sweetly." Yua couldn't say a word. Her eyes were glistening as her mischievous younger brother asked her if she felt very delighted. But Yua paid no attention to him, her teary eyes fixated on Li Jian. Then she bowed her head again to hesitantly ask for a favor. He thought the girl was going to ask for an autograph, and naturally he agreed. But it seemed that it was a difficult topic for her, as Yua stammered and couldn't get the words out. The tiled floor of the cafe trembled, and then a reddish-brown disaster misfortune burst from the ground, drowning out Yua's voice. But Li Jian still caught a glimpse of what she said. He wondered, what did you just say? Damn it, your sister is expressing her feelings while you're shouting. Please be polite. Yua's spear cut through a disaster misfortune in one swift motion, splitting the monster in half. Her demeanor shifted from that of a sweet young girl to a fierce warrior filled with deadly intent. Yua said, please wait for me a moment, because after I finish off these disaster misfortunes, I will propose to you immediately. With that, she charged forward with her spear, leaving Li Jian frozen in place, his body stiff. He turned to Sung Jie to confirm that what he heard from Yuba was true. She has already given you the signal right in front of you. Upon hearing this, he couldn't believe it and asked what she wished for. At that moment, dark clouds gathered, covering the sky over the entire city. The city loudspeaker kept announcing the appearance of disaster misfortunes, urging everyone to seek shelter quickly. On the streets and in the sky, grotesque disaster misfortunes rampage, killing and destroying everything in sight, causing the citizens to flee in panic. Yua's storm-like attacks were tearing apart each disaster misfortune one by one. She picked up speed, standing before a massive group of monsters. She spun her spear, generating a terrifying force to crack the ground beneath her feet, her eyes flashing with sparks. I will not allow these things to ruin my proposal. Seeing the sky and the ground crawling with disaster misfortunes, Yua whirled around rapidly with her spear, spinning it furiously. She stamped her foot down hard, cracking the earth beneath her. Yua held the spear in the air, her eyes flashing with a fierce electricity, then threw it like a javelin. The tremendous energy radiated into a beam of light, piercing through the clouds. This lotus fire pearl technique of hers had taken the lives of nearly all the disaster misfortune, resembling nothing less than hellfire raining down upon them. Li Jian let out a sigh of relief. It seemed he had worried unnecessarily by coming here. Yua was even stronger than Otiksu. No joke. Oh my, look over there. Upon seeing Li Jian, she switched back to her cube mode. The moment she let her guard down, a disaster misfortune monster lying in wait seized the opportunity to leap forward to try and bite her to death. But Li Jian was faster, pulling both Sung Jia and Yua out of the way of the vile disaster misfortune, saving the two girls just as Yua was still coming to her senses. Amidst the residual flames of the disaster misfortune, the voice of a woman cackled. I didn't expect you to dodge that attack. A strange woman appeared right atop the monster, laughing wickedly with delight. I didn't expect this human could dodge the attack. I like you. The smile on her face grew wider. She tugged sharply at a barbed rope. Next, I'll turn that human into my new pet. Li Jian's voice rang out just before the mouth of the disaster misfortune beast. What's with today? You all seem to enjoy playing with fire, huh? Well, it's perfect timing since I'm in need of a furnace to forge more holy artifacts. He stepped in front of the disaster misfortune beast, shouting in delight, "You will become my #1 furnace." The monster was not angry at all. Instead, it stirred a sense of delight within. If this guy were trained, it would definitely be interesting. A few minutes earlier, Yua looked at the monster in surprise. At that moment, she was an elusive race. Just as she thought she needed to stop him immediately, Li Jian lightly touched her forehead with his finger, as if he knew what she was thinking. This serious expression means he intends to handle this alone, right? If so, then absolutely not. I will deal with the monster, while you two ensure the safety of the people around. I know Sung Jia and Yua are very strong, so I trust you both. So you guys also trust me to handle it, okay? Of course, Yua smiled lightly and enthusiastically agreed with Li Jian alongside her brother. All three simultaneously released their powers, entering battle mode, ready to face the disaster misfortune monster in a fierce battle. Especially since Li Jian had his sights on Theli and Dan Lu, he would definitely use a bit more strength. The monster wildly swung its thorn whip at Li Jian, continuously shouting more, 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 with each strike that landed. But Li Jian was completely unfazed, casually slipping his hands into his pockets while deftly dodging the lightning-fast attacks being thrown at him. Keep struggling, he said. The woman's thorn whip wrapped around Li Jian, but he showed no reaction. Taken by surprise, the bizarre woman became even more excited. Laughing maniacally, she exclaimed, "Now this is real training." She continued to lash out with the whip, pulling Li Jian along and repeatedly smashing him into the surrounding buildings. Debris scattered everywhere as the ground was shattered. A tremendous collision created a force that sent everything around it flying away. From the chaos of dust, Li Jian remained in a trapped state, kneeling on one knee, his clothes torn in pieces. But he stood up with a look of boredom, pulling himself free in a single motion as if tearing a piece of paper. He spoke with complete disdain. "Is this all you've got? Why are you only good at talking big? It's not interesting at all." The woman's face twisted in disbelief at what had just happened. The monster below, the strange woman, opened her mouth wide and spewed a raging flame toward Li Jun. A loud explosion erupted with smoke and fire billowing upwards, resembling the scene of a nuclear bomb dropping. The giant form from Sung Jae's magical power braced itself to withstand the falling debris from the buildings. While guiding him, he urged the people to quickly move to the shelter. Once the last evacuees were taken care of, he dusted off his hands and ran to where his sister was staring intently at their uncle's battlefield in the distance. Yua felt a bit worried. Although Li Jun was very strong, the elusive race was also one of the most dangerous types of disaster misfortune. The creature just now was at least at the red level or higher. Fearing that their uncle might not be able to handle it alone, what if there were after effects after coming out of the cursed tower? So without thinking twice, Yua sprang into action and ran towards Li Jun, despite Sung Jae's attempts to stop her. The battlefield at Li Jun's location now resembled a gateway to hell, devastated and ablaze. This is it! Li Jun laughed excitedly. If there's fire, it should burn like this. The warmth of this fire was far greater than that little brat Song 2 celestial body from earlier. For within the smoke, Li Jun's figure gradually became clearer. His eyes glowed with a faint green hue, and he wore a mischievous smile. Li Jun gathered the flame of the disaster misfortune creature, forming it into a blazing sphere, grinning with delight. I've marked you now, top-notch furnace. The system notification appeared again. Flame collected. Can be used in spatial artifacts. The monster was startled to realize that Li Jun was still alive within her circle of fire. But fundamentally, her fire had never instilled fear in him. He raised his hand high to summon the crafting hammer. As soon as the system interface appeared again to notify him that he could use the fire he had just received in the artifact space, he grinned with delight and began to enhance right away. It was truly surprising when the system required him to select the target for enhancement. Li Jun held the mace high with one hand while the other hand held the fireball, preparing to smash them together. The enhancement was nothing other than himself. He struck the mace down directly, and a magic circle appeared beneath his feet, causing a whirlwind to blow up, with a dazzling blue light emanating from the circle. The strange woman became cautious and worried, not knowing what Li Jun intended to do. She excitedly shouted that she would not let Li Jun do as he pleased, gathering the fire on her hand in preparation to attack him. Unexpectedly, behind her, a girl wielding a magic spear had appeared out of nowhere, activating the skill lightning roar. Upon finishing her words, a pink-red lightning bolt appeared and the monster screamed. However, things did not go as Yua thought. The disaster misfortune had caught the girl's spear and crushed it in her palm. In a fit of rage, she threw the girl straight into a building not far away. The impact was so great that the girl crashed against the shattered wall behind her, spitting out a mouthful of blood, which pleased the monster quite a bit. The disaster misfortune creature lunged forward without knowing that a dark shadow was jumping up behind it. The giant lizard opened its mouth wide, as large as a multi-story building, just to swallow a girl, but still couldn't. Its entire body was jerked back. Before Yua's astonished gaze, it stubbornly lunged again with its mouth wide open. But it couldn't because Li Jun had a firm grip on its tail. He laughed maniacally. Where do you think you're going? Let me play with you first. What kind of strange game is this, Li Jun? Just like that, the monster was thrown straight to the ground, causing the earth to shatter and dust and debris to billow everywhere. After the slam, the monster lay motionless, leaving the disaster misfortune elusive race unable to believe their eyes. How can a human catch a hell lizard with bare hands and throw it away so easily? Li Jun was filled with killing intent, his gaze unwavering as he warned the enchantress. If you dare to lay a finger on Yua again, I will chop you into 1,000 pieces. His words made her feel like she was lost in the eyes of a deadly snake that could devour her at any moment. Sweat poured down like rain as she fearfully covered her face with her hands in panic. Is it possible for a legend like me to be threatened by humanity? Not wanting this, she enveloped herself in a dazzling purple light that made the wind swirl, startling Yua. Li Jun had no idea what this woman was planning to do. He maintained his indifferent expression, looking at the body of disaster misfortune transforming into a pitch-black color with the wings of the Hell Lord. Her appearance was already ugly, now it is even worse. Fueled by rage, she warned, this blow will send that insolent brat back to Mother Earth. As fast as the wind, she tucked her wings and unleashed Hellbound, soaring away, leaving destruction in her wake. She quickly approached Li Jun. Both struck at the same time, causing a massive surge of magical energy. Yua frantically screamed for her uncle, only to see a beam of white light erupting afterward. It was the explosion of magical power that lifted the entire city. Terrifying as it was, the reality left disaster misfortune even more disappointed. In her grip was a fist-sized glove called Blazing Flute, enhanced with fire from Hellwings, boasting fire resistance and random luck, which would increase the attribute by 1 point after consuming spicy food. However, he had no chance to try the 7-level spicy food because this item was so cheap, it could only be used once. Disaster Misfortune stood shocked, staring at the glove and at Li Jian's scarred face, which the system had activated to regenerate and was now completely healed. You will burn for life in my forge to pay for daring to play with fire in the residential area. She couldn't believe that such a cheap item could stop her. Ha ha ha, you think my creation is inferior? Ha. Li Jian burst into triumphant laughter, but his eyes glinted with a dangerous light. My gloves are very handy for tearing apart those feather ones. The system board appeared just in time, stating that fire from Hell Wings had a sinister aura too strong and needed to be purified to become part of the Ophiuchus celestial body. He clenched his fist tightly. Purification is a cleansing punch, right? Li Jian wasted no words and charged in to hit the monster continuously without mercy. The monster collapsed onto the floor. It still didn't experience any purification. It was quite exhilarating. It turned out that punching this creature wasn't the way to purify, and he had already knocked it out dead. Well, that's that. He said, turning to look at the Hell Lizard. If the 2-legged furnace is dead, then moving on to the 4-legged furnace is fine too. Seeing Li Jian brutally attack its master, the lizard quickly raised a white flag in surrender. From now on, the Hell Lizard became a prisoner of the Ophiuchus celestial body. Li Jian listed a bunch of new names for the Hell Lizard, but the names he suggested didn't make much sense. The lizard chose the cutest name, Torch. The sisters Yua and Sung Jae also ran over, looking at their uncle who was a bit battered but still very strong. Surely he would be fine. Yua immediately said there was something urgent to discuss with him. Remembering when Yua mentioned that she would propose to Li Jian, I silently thought, oh no, I'm doomed. Stammering, I was about to subtly remind Yua that the real question she wanted to ask was about the information related to Li Jian's sacrifice alone in the Demon Tower 25 years ago. Oh, was it not a proposal? I had always been skeptical. Although the celestial body zodiac signs had always said that he had sacrificed himself to protect humanity, it was strange that he was the only one who died. I clenched Yua's hand tightly as I recalled my doubts, which I had done nothing about, lingering in my heart until today. Having witnessed your strength, I could be certain that you didn't sacrifice yourself. You were murdered by someone. After hearing Yua's sharp reasoning, Li Jian pondered for a moment and then sighed. Is Yua the daughter of that fool Otiksu? Quite perceptive, aren't you? If the girl was this clever, Li Jian had no reason to hide anything. He revealed the truth that 25 years ago, he had been betrayed in the tower by one of those 12 saints. The memory of that knife strike that day flashed in Li Jian's mind. He wore an intense look of discontent. Hearing this, the two sisters could not believe their ears. Aren't the celestial body zodiac signs and Li Jian born to protect the world? Some Jack couldn't understand how those people could do this to Li Jian, the great hero would sacrifice to protect this world. Li Jian immediately agreed upon hearing that. The problem lies there, my child. He is too powerful, stronger than all the saints of the 12 zodiac signs. He alone could kill Red Eye, which is why they are plotting to assassinate him. Once the leader of Disaster Misfortune is dead, the 12 zodiac signs no longer have Disaster Misfortune to extract money and power from the world, and then Li Jian, the one who killed the leader of Disaster Misfortune, will be their greatest obstacle. That was his hypothesis, but just hearing that made Hubo's two children so furious that they trembled all over. Sung Jae lowered his head and muttered, the one who saved this world is you, yet you have to find a way to survive in that very tower, and your name and reputation are stolen by those despicable people. Seeing both of them suddenly burst into tears, Li Jian exhaled and placed his hand on their shoulders to comfort the two kids. You don't need to cry like that, because they will definitely have to repay the debt 100-fold. Speaking of which, Li Jian opened his phone to check some news about Saintess Sophie Marty. This was her schedule for the end of the day. In Hanwoo, countless reporters and journalists were gathered in a conference room as the truth about the events 20 years ago is going to be revealed today. Journalists are wondering if it has anything to do with the message that appeared in the previous Drachma case, or perhaps it is related to the recent controversy about Li Jian being alive. While there are many unpredictable things that could be mentioned, they are certain of one thing. The story about to be revealed will be shocking. The camera flashes were continuous as Sophie finally appeared at the podium. She smiled friendly on the outside, but inside she was sweating, unsure of how to open her mouth. Her only thought was, can I just run away from this press conference? But she couldn't run because she was being suppressed by Li Jian's artifact. She had no idea what the thing around her neck could do if she resisted. So now she could only accept being a puppet for Li Jian, controlled to say words she didn't want to. She didn't know how other celestial body constellations were, but Li Jian would surely kill her. Finally, Sophie spoke up. I am here today to clarify an incident that occurred 20 years ago at the Demon Tower event. though it happened a long time ago, but was shocking when those 13 people stormed in to attack Red Eye. Then there were privileges granted to the heroes. Until now, Sophie bowed her head and continued. A hero who truly defeated Red Eye that day was. She furrowed her brows and let out an unwanted sigh. In the end, she still said the name. Li Jun. At first, no one was too concerned, but after a few seconds, the press suddenly paused when they noticed something was off. Then everyone exclaimed in surprise. A series of questions flooded in full of disbelief. Li Jun is actually the one who defeated Red Eye, not Stephen Maker. So the 12 celestial bodies have been lying for 20 years? The most important question is whether Li Jun is still alive or not. Hearing each question, Sophie's face fell. As she began to confirm that Li Jun was still alive, a stream of dark energy rushed in, chilling her to the bone. A very dangerous-looking man appeared right behind her, cutting off her words, causing Sophie to whirl around in shock. He was Jean-Louis Moraine, the cancer saint. Sophie was clearly terrified to see Moraine here. Ignoring the guy who mocked her in front of the press, the saintess is not feeling well. It seems this press conference can't continue, can it, Sophie? His pupils turned red and a vicious expression clearly appeared on his face. He leaned closer, reaching out to turn off the mic just as Sophie trembled and asked, "Why did you have to come at this moment?" He leaned close to her ear and whispered, "Shut your mouth. What were you planning to say when you turned that mic on? I can see you're starting to overstep your bounds. You've been given the title of saintess and have lived in arrogance for so long, and you still think that's not enough? If you don't want the scene of yourself being torn apart broadcasted to the whole world, keep your mouth shut for me." Moraine turned the mic back on and calmly announced to everyone that he had just confirmed the saintess was being threatened by someone else, which was why she was speaking so ambiguously. His face implied he was the one protecting the saintess, so there was nothing to worry about. The hall fell silent when Moraine declared, "The press conference ends here." Then someone suddenly asked, "What about Li Jun?" Before the question was finished, a wave of dark magic crashed in. Moraine, with his hands in his pockets, stood above looking down menacingly. Li Jun died 20 years ago in the Demon Tower. Do you even need me to explain more? His gaze was icy. If he were truly alive, he would have shown up. Have you seen him appear? The reporter was scared, pressed on. So, who threatened the saintess? Why didn't that person drag Li Jun into this? His question sparked curiosity among all the journalists and reporters on site. Hundreds of inquiries continued to bombard Moraine, making him angrier. Veins bulging, magic emanating thicker as he silently cursed. Do these pesky insects not know their place? The sorcery of the guy gathered in the palm of his hand, preparing to kill everyone here to silence them. A foot flew in just as Li Jun spoke. "I can tell you intend to chop up the reporter here." Moraine received a kick from Li Jun and flew straight into the wall, creating a large hole right behind Sophie, making her scream in terror. Damn it, that guy is here. Before Moraine could see clearly, Li Jun charged forward with the tail of the hell lizard in his hand, greeting Moraine in a grand manner. "Damn crowd, long time no see. Your mangled face looks just like it did back in the day, huh? Let's have a chat." He swung the tail of the lizard straight at the guy, causing the ground to explode. Sophie was surprised to realize it was a tail. Meanwhile, the hell lizard was curled up in a corner like a display item for all to see, resembling an animal in a zoo. Sonjae even found a sign. "Please do not feed the baby, it may cause stomachache. Everyone passing my turn to look one more time." Li Jun stood in front, muttering curses at Moraine's fallen body. "Are you trying to interrupt the press conference?" But unbeknownst to him, Moraine had bravely stepped out from behind him. A few minutes earlier, he had heard someone hitting the hell lizard. It turned out to be, Seeing the black mist gathering around the figure standing behind him, Li Jun was not pleased. "Are you playing that clone game again?" Moraine, of course, didn't recognize the person in front of him, merely staring at him with boredom, puzzled by who this was that knew his abilities. Whenever he introduced himself, it was always in a grandiose manner, and this time was no different. Li Jun, who else would it be? The reporters were shocked when they heard the name of someone who had disappeared 20 years ago. The atmosphere suddenly fell into complete silence. Then, one of them burst out laughing, causing everyone else to join in, simply because Li Jun couldn't possibly appear so youthful. If he were still alive today, he'd be nearing 60. Even Moraine chuckled, a man with real power, but clearly delusional. If you're going to impersonate someone, at least choose your target wisely. A hell lizard's tail smacked Moraine square in the face, sending him flying once again. Li Jun casually twirled the lizard's tail in his hand and said as he spun it, "Well, I guess I'll just have to beat some sense into you." He growled at the dawdling reporters, "What are you standing around for? Get back to work. And who was it that laughed at me just now? You're up next." The reporters scattered in panic, and from the stands, Sophie, fearing she'd be next, scrambled to make her escape. The lizard's tail cracked against the wall behind her, blocking Sophie's way out. Behind her, Li Jian stood, hands on his hips, flashing an evil grin, his eyes glowing brightly. "Hey, little bug, where do you think you're going? You better start telling the whole truth." He shouted, revealing all the truths that 20 years ago, the Celestial Body royal clan fled at the sight of the Red Eye. They had exploited my name to boost their own reputation, and the face of the saintess Aquarius has been smashed and rebuilt, but her nature cannot be changed. You must clarify all your sins. As he spoke, he pressed hard against Sophie's forehead, who did not dare to retort. He silently cursed this crazy dog for revealing everything. Suddenly, a cloud of black smoke engulfed the space, dense like fog in the morning. The system board appeared. Warning, the presence of the darkest star is bringing danger. Moraine's pure black magic was unleashed powerfully, as if wanting to engulf everything, including Jean Louis Tugavadar's. The force radiating out caused the lights on the ceiling to explode one by one. Only the reporters below screamed in panic, clutching their heads. Sophie gasped, her eyes wide. "What are you looking at?" Li Jian thought she was calling him, only to be met with a loud shout that felt like a slap to the face. The situation was extremely critical. Couldn't he see that? I could sense the presence of the Celestial Body royal clan within the black smoke. Moraine stood with his head lowered. Behind him appeared a giant figure resembling a human but dark and frightening, with tentacles and eyes without bright eyelashes. The man flashed a cruel smile along with a menacing tone. "I really didn't expect you to be Li Jian. Fine then. Although I don't know how you managed to survive leaving the Demon Tower, let's have a welcoming party for you now." Li Jian's face scrunched up as he saw Sophie behind him, fear making him nearly lose control. Clearly, both of them sensed the intense energy radiating from Cancer, and everyone was on high alert. Taking to the sky, the man faced Li Jian's gaze, emanating dark energy from his body, countering Li Jian's green aura. The two sides resembled opposing factions, signaling an impending bloody battle. At the sanctuary of Sagittarius' celestial body, which was also his home, Hugo Otters was cooking a fragrant pot of noodles. He sighed, "Sungjae, Yua, and Leon are all out, so tonight I'll just have noodles." He then sat down, grabbed the remote, and turned on the news. The TV was broadcasting live from the battlefield between Li Jian and Moraine. The reporter continuously updated the current situation, narrating it like a sports event. During Saintess Sophie's press conference, a man claiming to be Li Jian forcefully intruded. As you can see, he is engaged in incredibly fierce close combat with Cancer Celestial Body. To be honest, the battle is extremely interesting. The instant noodle in Otatsu's mouth became tasteless. Why did he say he was going to meet his two children when he was now on live television fighting with Cancer? Moraine gathered a black magic orb in his hand and pressed it hard against the ground, sending the magic shooting in a straight line that destroyed the earth, causing rocks and dirt to fly everywhere. The reporters there scattered in panic. Meanwhile, Li Jian showed no sign of fear and easily dodged the simple attack with a swift movement. He heard Li Jian scoff derisively. "Those 3 attacks have no effect." Moraine then laughed menacingly. "You've fallen into my trap." As he gestured, the black energy that had just slammed into the ground quickly spread towards Li Jian, rising like piercing spikes aimed straight at him. Moraine was surprised to see him pull out a knife, pointing it directly at the attack from Cancer. He leaped and spun in the air as 2 pieces of the blade flew off, looking picturesque, causing the reporters to applaud nonstop. He joyfully tossed himself backward and landed dramatically, not forgetting to wear a bright smile on his face. Without waiting another second, his body was enveloped in blue electric sparks, resembling the Flash. Then he shot forward at high speed towards Moraine. Moraine was also not to be underestimated, continuing to gather the magic orb in his hand, sneering, "Is this all you learned in the last 20 years? As the man's 2 arms fell, black power once again tore through the ground to attack Li Jian directly. This time he didn't avoid it, but swung the blade in his hand, cutting through the foe's magical power as if he were slicing vegetables. While dodging, he shouted, "Is this all you've got to brag about?" In a blink of an eye, the blade sliced Moraine in half. However, the feeling of striking the body made Li Jian sense something was off. It turned out that the figure in front of him was just a clone dissolving into smoke. "What the hell, are you kidding me?" Li Jian yelled. "After 20 years is the only technique you can master, the clone technique." Moraine's cunning voice came from behind Li Jian as he gathered the black smoke. "I'll take that as a compliment." Out of nowhere, a swirling black vortex appeared, sweeping everything away, almost blowing away Sophie's hair as she hid behind a wooden table. It looked like a pitch-black tornado, but it was sucking all the black energy from the mouths of the reporters. Holding the blade tightly, Li Jian was clearly furious. How does this madman plan to take responsibility for doing this? Moraine crouched on the ground, appearing relaxed, with both hands emanating swirling magical energy. After drawing power from the life of the reporters, taking responsibility was a matter for later. It was a bit exhausting to take on alone. But if the opportunity arose, he had to deal with Li Jun first. Li Jun turned around as if he had realized something, his eyes wide with anger towards Moraine. "It was you who stabbed me at the Demon Falls, wasn't it?" Moraine did not reply, adopting a mocking tone. "Are you immersed in a game of finding the culprit? A hero saving the world drowning in a petty grudge. If others saw you, they would mistake you for a thug on the street." It didn't matter whether it was true or not. Li Jun could only see this guy spouting nonsensical words unbearable to listen to. Hiding behind that clone was impressive, but it was ultimately useless. Moraine finally informed him. "This is not an ordinary clone. These clones are created from the life force of the journalists that were just drained." The guy warned sharply. "If you kill a clone, their life force will shatter, and of course, I cannot guarantee their lives. Damn it, risking the lives of others to hold you back." He chuckled hoarsely in his throat, rehearsing this trashy move that resembled the face of cancer. The whole group of Moraines stood together, each one laughing in a bizarre manner, their sounds overlapping. "I'll take that as your last words. Now die." The clones rushed in all at once, taking turns to punch Li Jun relentlessly. But just after a few seconds, all of them showed expressions of disbelief, because somehow they realized that what they were striking was actually the tail of the Hell Lizard. Li Jun jumped out from behind his clones. The skill he just learned, Drachma, you trash. He clenched his fist and struck the nearest Moraine. Meanwhile, a system message popped up with lines of text. The substitute skill allows the user to summon a desired object for use, like the shield of the Ophiuchus celestial body. You can summon one of 3 objects that have been in close contact recently. The Moraine was punched so hard that he was terrified, not understanding how Li Jun could identify this particular clone as one that utilized a part of Moraine, due to the use of the 13th sense skill to grasp the opponent's weakness. But he had no intention to explain. Instead, he smiled gleefully and said, "You have a really foul stench. There's no escape, kid." Then from the body of the upper-class clone, he extracted a light purple crystal right at the heart. This made the upper-class clone scream in pain. The sensing ability of the Gemini celestial body can't find me, how can you? His snake demon consumed it, hitting a fragment of the Cancer core contained 33% of the soul and 20% of the power of the Cancer zodiac. This caused the power of this constellation to suffer a large crack. Only through the system notifications constantly popping up did he realize that the guardian spirit of Cancer was extremely frightened to see this scene. The dark star magic surrounding them was vanishing. The frenzied whirlwind has dissipated, leaving behind a desolate space filled only with dust and debris everywhere. The group of reporters who were drained of energy has now awakened, confused about what happened, only knowing that they are still alive. Li Jun stands and looks at Moraine's clone with the core in hand, listening as the clone struggles to ask, "What has he experienced in the Demon Tower that makes me feel the power of the divine from you?" Li Jun just smiles and says he will use the newly extracted crystal from his body. He is being careful. The black smoke gradually takes the clone away. This time defeated, but Moraine still smiles slyly, saying he will be back and bring a gift for Li Jun that will give him a headache with that nonsense. He doesn't care much, but Moraine's personality cannot just silently retreat like that. Whether there's a warning or not, that monster will come back. Suddenly, Li Jun's pocket vibrates. He takes out his phone and sees that Tixu is calling. As soon as he answers, he hears a scream in his ear. "What trouble has that bastard of yours caused this time?" "Never mind explaining, just run." Li Jun had not yet understood what was going on when Hugo Otters began to ramble. "I was watching the news and saw that you just eliminated Jim Lewis's superior clone, right? So a missile is about to land on you." Li Jun was taken aback by this shocking news. A satellite in space had indeed locked onto the spot where Li Jun was standing. A missile was preparing to launch. The system activated. The missile had been fired from the satellite and was flying towards Earth at breakneck speed. It was called the Mormont missile, a devastating weapon created by the celestial body of Ma and the celestial body of Gemini working together to deal with the great disaster misfortune after Li Jun disappeared. This missile was the ultimate weapon of humanity, capable of incinerating an entire area where the type of disaster misfortune appeared that humans could not withstand, following a pre-programmed attack trajectory. Li Jun frowned upon hearing about this missile and remarked, "So it created that? Truly useless beyond words, and they relied on Moraine's signal to activate it. This must be a surprise gift." Earlier, that guy said was for Li Jun. He was about to analyze the situation when Hugo Otters snapped him back to reality. "Just run for your life first, then we can talk." "But how can I run? You said the whole missile would rain down on the city." "That's true." Hugo Otters raised his hand helplessly. Suddenly, Li Jun turned to look at Sophie and flashed a cunning smile. leaving her confused and uneasy as he said, "I have a way, my friend." Outside of the universe, the rocket that had just been launched was heading towards Earth, specifically to the city of Shower. Announcements from the city were urgently sounding. The Manhwa rocket is falling in this area. All citizens are advised to quickly find the nearest shelter. This is an emergency situation. Hearing this, the people were frightened, shouting and fleeing in panic. What the hell? A disaster misfortune weapon is falling in the center of Shower. Screams and cries echoed as everyone ran chaotically. Sung Jia and Yua found themselves amidst the panicking crowd, completely unaware of the situation. They had no idea where their uncle was. A loud explosion erupted in the sky as a flash of blue light zipped by at an unbelievable speed. But Sung Jia recognized it was Li Jun. He was carrying Sophie on his shoulder, using his magic to fly straight towards the rocket while she screamed in terror. He used the power of the Celestial Twin Counselor to activate the levitation and teleportation skill to move towards the Manhwa rocket. Thanks to the supportive skills, both of them moved in the blink of an eye to the rocket. Ignoring Sophie's terrified screams, he said, "That bug, as long as you're determined, you can melt anything, right? I brought you up here to melt this rocket." As soon as he turned his head, Li Jun immediately refused. Sophie was spun around by Li Jun, who warned, "If you can't do it, then you, I, and all the innocent people down there will die. Do you understand? This is the time you have to pay for living carefree for the past 20 years. After saying that, he threw her straight into the rocket. Sophie was so frightened that she lost control, screaming, "That crazy bastard. Oh my God, don't throw me." Another scream was useless. Sophie had been thrown mercilessly. He told her to perform the miracle of the saintess, but all Sophie could manage was a string of curses directed at Li Jun. "You son of a bitch!" The holy goddess of Aquarius was suddenly summoned to face the gigantic rocket along with the girl saintess who looked like she was on the verge of death. Before acting, the guardian deity of Aquarius cursed Li Jun as a madman with all the words she could muster. But there was no more time. Sophie wanted to curse as well, but she was too exhausted, urging the holy goddess, "Think of something quickly." Not wanting her celestial body to die, the holy goddess of Aquarius transferred all her power to Sophie. Looking at the rocket before her, she screamed loudly, then couldn't help but cry out of fear. Surprisingly, her tears helped activate the skill Goddess's Tears. A magic circle was discovered, and soon, Sophie's tears transformed into fierce waves directed at the Manhwa missile. The two sides clashed fiercely, but the Goddess's Tears skill quickly defeated the missile, tearing it into 100 pieces. Sophie's mind was spinning. She muttered, "I did it. I succeeded." But suddenly she snapped back to reality, realizing she was free-falling through the air. To make matters worse, Li Jun didn't even try to catch her. He just stood aside, grinning slyly. "You've been enhanced, so it doesn't matter if you fall." Looking up, the explosion from the waves colliding with the missile caused debris to continue falling to the ground. Li Jun had to find a way quickly since the falling debris was enough to crush several areas. The people below could also see the explosion and were buzzing. The missile has disintegrated in midair, but the debris falling down is enough to scare anyone to death. Suddenly remembering that the missile was created by the celestial body Gemini, Li Jun decided to send a grand greeting to that entity. Hugo Otters was at home when Li Jun's voice suddenly rang out. "What's up, my friend? Can you hear me?" He was taken aback but recognized that it was the voice of Li Jun, so he looked up at the ceiling and asked, "Hello, have you dealt with that missile yet? The situation is urgent. I don't have time to explain, just lend me the absolute coordinate skill. The absolute coordinate skill of the Sagittarius celestial body is used to precisely move to a designated target. The combined power is enhanced when used with various weapons." Hugo Otters, hearing this, figured that the situation was truly dangerous, so he hurriedly sent him the absolute coordinate skill without a second thought. The foolish friend took the bait, making Li Jun chuckle. "Thanks, number one slave." Quickly, he received the absolute coordinate skill from the Sagittarius celestial body with 238 uses remaining. Li Jun wore a cunning smile. Combining the absolute coordinate skill with the teleport skill, using the authority of the Gemini celestial body, he moved all the fragments from the Manhwa missile as a gift to the saint of the Gemini celestial body. The overlapping magic circles caused all the fragments to disappear. The people were overjoyed, and Sung Jia and Yua were also happy for Uncle Li Jun, who successfully prevented the threat. Sungyuk, standing amidst the joyful crowd, felt something was off as the fragments disappeared so easily. Suddenly, a sound from Yin Yang Place, the sacred ground of the Gemini celestial body, called out to Sungyuk. As soon as the voice was heard, the person on the other end shouted, "What the hell is that stupid, ignorant bastard doing using the power of the Saint Chairman?" He pressed against the glass to look outside and saw pieces of the Manhwa missile falling down on Yin Yang Place with a loud noise like in a sci-fi movie. After the press conference was broadcast in Hangwo, the news of Li Jun's return became trending. Everywhere, people were talking about how Li Jian had returned and defeated Cancer Saint while successfully stopping the Mormont missile. In the president's office at the Blue House, senior officials of Hangul were lively discussing the rumors of Li Jian's return and his defeat of Cancer Saint, as well as preventing the Mormont missile. While they were chatting animatedly, suddenly, a blue light pierced through the office ceiling, causing everyone to scream in fear. Out of nowhere, Li Jian suddenly landed on the desk, carrying the dazed Sungyuk under his arm. In his other hand, he held Tiksu, still wearing a yellow apron with a cute bear, coughing. "What are you mice gossiping about that looks so tense? Now I will settle this with you all. I came here to get back my money. You were holding the account containing the money from selling my stuff, right?" Even though the officials were crouched in a corner of the room, they couldn't stop their gossiping. "Isn't that Li Jian who just appeared on TV?" He interrogated the group. "Why is it that Tiksu, whom I granted representative status, cannot access my account?" Sitting in front, he glared threateningly at the group. "You better explain yourselves properly to me, or else." One of the council members stepped forward to explain that it was because Hugo was a foreigner. Li Jian furrowed his brow in confusion, and the man continued to explain, "Since Li Jian died a few years ago, there has been no celestial body, which is why we don't trust a foreign sage. Furthermore, the power of Sagittarius has gradually weakened with each incident. In the end, we had to entrust the matter to someone more reliable than Hugo here." Unfortunately, the one who stepped up to explain had not finished speaking when Li Jian punched him. "Why would you do something so irrational? Of all the people to choose, you picked that cheap witch. Who the hell do you think you are to look down on Otiksu?" He appeared even more aggressive, about to raise his hand as if to punch the others again, looking no different from a thug on the street. The more he spoke, the more he flared his nostrils, demanding, "How dare you look down on Otiksu?" He was about to say that he didn't care about the group when he heard his friend add, "Only I, Li Jian, have the right to look down on Otiksu, because he is my slave. It's certainly not for you useless dogs to do." The precious words just spoken left Hugo Otter shocked, his body frozen in disbelief. Not daring to believe his ears, he asked repeatedly, "What did he just say?" Continuing to point fingers, Hugo Otters pretended to dismiss, saying, "This guy, apart from being handsome, has no special talent at all. Even if he were as poor as a beggar, he is not someone you can treat like this." Otiksu on this side was left speechless, constantly pleading for this madman to stop. The officials found it extremely strange. Has anyone dared to insult the revered centaur like Li Jian? But no one dared to speak up, fearing they would be knocked out like that quick-taunt man earlier. Li Jian's curses became clearer and clearer, so much so that even someone as easygoing as Otiksu turned pale. The more he spoke, the angrier he got. He turned to scold Otiksu for being a fool, for not obtaining citizenship to enjoy such treatment. Otiksu, currently like a stiff mannequin, helplessly apologized and took all the blame upon himself. Seeing this, Li Jian, in a noble manner, patted him on the back encouragingly, saying, "Just try to live well," while Otiksu could only wipe his tears. What kind of worthless friends stand up to protect yet insult like this so beautifully? Enough with the back and forth. Li Jian completely changed his attitude, cracking his knuckles, his eyes blazing with anger. "Where's the money? If you don't fork it over, you'll beat all of you to death today." Before anyone could respond, a high-pitched female scream echoed from above. Sonya quickly looked up, knowing exactly who was speaking. A hard stomp from a purple-tinted boot caused Li Jian to grimace in disgust as he looked over. Haiji, the celestial twin-sing of the zodiac, immediately started cursing as she arrived. "These guys have already accessed it. It's none of your business, so don't worry about it." Her eyes blazed with fury as she mentioned that the money would be used to renovate Yin Yang Place. "It was you, wasn't it? You sent the debris of the Mormont rocket to Yin Yang Place, didn't you? That's why Yin Yang Place was completely destroyed. Do you have any idea how much I've lost?" She was seething with rage, pointing her finger directly at Li Jian to accuse him, causing him to wear a puzzled expression. He tilted his head, stroked his chin, and abruptly asked, "Who the hell are you?" Damn it, to rant like that and not even remember who I am. Fuming, biting her lip, she decided to raise her hand to cast a spell that would eliminate the scruffy guy right in front of her. A few office workers were scared to death, thinking they could just watch the drama, only to fall victim to the trickery and suffer. Only Sungyuk was excited by the scene of the ultimate summoning technique of the celestial Gemini, summoning the spirit of the spirit queen, Larry Queen. A female fairy with braided red hair and 2 long horns appeared behind Heiji. With the effect of shimmering water beneath her feet, the spirit queen slowly opened her eyes and unfurled her gigantic wings that resembled those of a massive fly. Heiji shouted in triumph. This is the equivalent spirit of the holy goddess. Confidently, he expected Li Jian to be knocked out immediately. Before his sleeves had even fallen, Li Jian had already flown straight towards Heiji, grabbing his waist. He shouted, "Heave-ho!" Li Jun threw Heiji aside, shot up like a rocket, and crashed through the hole in the ceiling he had just created. Heiji soared straight up into the blue sky. The sound "eh" echoed faintly as if it were coming from far away. Needless to say, Sungyup was so panicked that he ran to the hole yelling, "Oh, Castellan! Oh, Castellan!" The remaining Spirit Queen is separated from the Castellan and her power is reduced by half. This goblin seems to be smarter, quietly playing cards and sneaking back to its den before it's too late. But how could he fool Li Jian? Before he could make a move and disappear, he quickly grabbed her by the head and pulled her back up. Now that he had her, it seemed easier to catch the spirit. He thought simply yanking her hair up like a bunch of scallions would do the trick. Larry Queen cried out loudly for mercy, and then with a bang, something fell so quickly that only the light beam on the ground was visible. It was none other than Heiji crashing back into the room in an unconscious state after a long flight. She had lost consciousness, causing her magical control to become unstable. The shape-shifting ability borrowed from the Piss's celestial body had also vanished. The transformation spell had disappeared, revealing an unfamiliar woman or a completely strange figure. One couldn't blame Li Jian for not recognizing the person in front of him. Did you think you would win just because this Spirit Queen was here? Now you all see clearly, right? Li Jian glanced at the council members while holding the Spirit Queen's hair, making her cry out in distress. The transformation into a strange maid left those people speechless, so they had been calling an insignificant one Castellan all this time. After displaying his power, John threatened, "Where's my money? Make sure you bring it out right now. Don't make me lose my temper."